All right, you guys, we'll get started here in a minute. 1 second. The heck? Okay. Here we go. Let's continue. Oh, actually, I'm going to check if I can hear myself. Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Okay, cool. Brain power comes from the lungs. General Patton did not order any man to stand erect. He explained what happened when the shoulders were kept straight and standing erect. I remember his lecture on brain power. He said, in war, as in peace, a man needs all of the brains he can get. Nobody ever had too many brains. Brains come from oxygen. Oxygen comes from the lungs, where the air goes when we breathe. This oxygen in the air gets into the blood and travels to the brain. Any fool can double the size of his lungs. Many can more than double their lung power. If you can double your lung power, you could be twice as smart and twice as quick. Take 10 big deep breaths several times a day. Take in all the air you can get, and then hold that air as long as you can get air for. Sorry. Take in all the air you can get, and then hold in that air as long as you can. Air does not cost a cent. It takes brains to think and act quickly to kill the enemy. Try this deep breathing and hold in that air until you pop. This will expand your lungs. Do this deep breathing when you are standing around wondering what to do. No reason for a man to be idle. He can only be doing something, such as deep breathing. We are a bunch of lazy breathers. We use our lungs less and less, so we increase our dumbness. Some of us smoke, like me. I only smoke for promotions and babies. Smoking cuts down on the power of the brain. You can breathe deep, every one of you. We want every advantage we can get. We want to kill the enemy, because we will be smarter and quicker on the trigger. General Patton frequently warned us about smoking too much. I saw him smoke a cigar only one time. He smoked a cigar the day our intelligence officer, Colonel Pickering, received his star as a general. When General Patton smoked cigarettes, he held them with 2 fingers in the style of a college freshman. General Patton worked on those who smoked too much. As usual, his advice pertained to combat. I remember him saying, "You never dare strike a match in combat at night. Could reveal our position to the enemy. Many a gun has been fired at match at night. Many a gun has been fired at a match at night. With powerful field glasses, those matches stand out like searchlights. The hot end of a cigarette can cause the loss of several hundred men. General Patton tried to stop us from smoking. He never issued an order against smoking. If any one of us smoked too much, this officer would feel General Patton had his hand on his shoulder. Sir, you are smoking too much. General Patton would walk away and never give the officer a chance to reply. The officer had the message. This long oxygen brain principle was given by General Patton in early 1942. This was at least 30 years before I remember any doctor prescribing oxygen for patients with failing memories. It was at least 30 years before football players use oxygen to give them more power to win. I have given this deep breathing principle to Launchion club members. I ask the members of the club to try taking a big deep breath and to hold it until they pop. After one meeting, a doctor suggested that this was dangerous for some people who had never taken a full breath. When I report this doctor's suggestion to General Patton in heaven or hell, I am sure General Patton will explode. Deep breathing dangerous? Do the American people use their lungs so little they cannot take a deep breath? I try to remember this deep breathing principle when I get sleepy. One doctor suggested that deep breathing could add 10 years to our lives. I have a friend who is a surgeon. Every time we meet, he says, I'm taking deep breaths for General Patton. There is no power in a bushel of blubber. Sorry. There is no power in a bushel of blubber. General Patton was not the type of commander who would order men to stand at attention as a type of punishment. When General Patton came into any area, soldiers would snap to attention without an order. For all of his lectures and briefing sessions, he gave the command, at ease. His instructions on stature were humorous. Although the men laughed, they received the instructions. He instructed, any man who cannot see his shoes without bending halfway to the ground has a real problem. He is spending all of his energy pushing around a bushel of blubber. Every man needs all the power he can get. Power comes from the engine in the belly. Great piece of machinery, that belly. Put in good food, and you get good power. If you keep the belly muscles tight, you can increase the power of the whole body. I will see that you get the best food I can wrangle out of the quartermasters. The food you eat turns into power, just like putting gasoline in a car. Your belly should be strong and tight enough to take a dozen saber jabs and not stop you from going forward. Do not laugh. You can do it. It has been done. If you keep going after the enemy has given you several saber jabs, you will scare the hell out of the enemy. The men laughed at General Patton continued. The men laughed, and General Patton continued. It's no big deal to get more power out of the belly. Just pull it in and hold it in for 10 seconds. Pull it in 10 times every time you think of it. That will give you lots of power. You'll be turned up like a good engine. A man is a damn fool to die just because he forgot to pull in his bushel of blubber. Every man ought to be able to look down and see his shoes without bending to the ground. There was no power. No, my bad. This principle of strain and pressure was pushed by General Patton before the term isometrics became a common word. Everyone laughed at the general, but his words were not wasted. Every man started pulling in his bushel of blubber. For the 10 seconds, the troops did increase their power. They did stand straight. They laughed at the idea of taking in a dozen saber jabs to scare the enemy, but some of them did go ahead after severe injury. The enemy was shocked. So shocked that many thousands of the enemy troops surrendered at the sound of General Patton's tanks. And then there's a picture here, assuming command of the 1st Armored Corps. We got more pictures. The headquarters of the 1st Armored Corps. The author, at entrance to headquarters of the 1st Armored Corps. And then here he is, General Patton, firing on the pistol range. Dang, he shoots with one hand. It's kind of cool. Profile targets replaced the circle targets. The day General Patton strapped on the pistols. January 15th, 1942. Not bad. You got more pictures. General Patton's tent in the desert. A headquarters building at Desert Base Camp. Inside a base camp headquarters building. Oh, here's a good one. Keep your feet clean and study the Bible. It's a hell of a lot more important to keep your feet clean than it is to brush your teeth. Do not walk on your teeth. You use your feet all the time. Use your feet all the time to get the enemy. Keep your feet clean. General Patton preached. My feet raised General Patton's anger when I had a severe case of athlete's foot. The California desert sand was always hot, and my feet were so infected that I limped. When General Patton saw me limping, I told him the cause, and he exploded. You are too lazy to bend down and scrub your feet? Bend down there and get all that crud out from between your toes. Then you'll be able to walk. He was right, as usual. Now, every time I take a shower or bath, I dig out all the crud as he advised. I have never had a serious foot infection since I followed his advice. In reading the many books about General Patton, I learned that he continued to push for clean feet during the long drive through Germany in the middle of the cold winter and the Battle of the Bulge. He demanded a new pair of white socks for every soldier every day. He knew the men could not wash and dry their socks in sub-zero weather. The task of getting clean socks to 100,000 soldiers would be a task more difficult than my task of getting gas to General Patton's in California in 1941. This clean feet principle does not merit any great amount of attention unless you have sore feet. I associate this principle with the washing of the feet in the Bible, although General Patton never mentioned the Bible with his foot care principle. I'm pretty sure I think I know what's going to happen. I think this is a good story. Let's see. He did read the Bible constantly and advised us to do the same. He said so many times. Read some of the Bible every day. Let me just see here. I want to tell you guys a story if it doesn't come up. 1 second. Study those chapters where it talks about the desert of North Africa. We are going to be fighting in that area. You remember every mountain and waterhole mentioned in the Bible. It could save your life. The Bible is accurate. If the Bible tells where there is a source of water, the chances are great. If the Bible tells where there is a source of water, the chances are great. If the Bible tells where there is a source of water, the chances are great that water hole or spring will still be there. In the Patton movie, a newsman asked General Patton if he read the Bible. That was on General Patton's bedside table. The general responded with profanity that he read the Bible every night. In the theater, when I saw the movie, the audience laughed at how silly it would be for an army general to read the Bible every night. For General Patton, reading the Bible was not a laughing matter. General Patton knew the Bible. It is reported that he corrected a high-ranking officer of a church on the correct words of a quotation from the Bible, which the church officer had used. The church leader reacted to General Patton's correction, stating in anger that no man as profane as General Patton should quote any religious verses, nor correct a member of the clergy. General Patton reacted with the same degree of anger, stating that the head of such a great church should not quote false verses from the Bible. General Patton ordered an attendant to get the Bible. Before the attendant could return, General Patton asked the head of the church for the chapter and verse of the quotation the church leader had quoted. The church leader could not give the chapter nor the verse, so General Patton walked to the blackboard and wrote the author, chapter, and the number of the verse. Turning to the high-ranking military officers, General Patton recited the verse. When the attendant brought a Bible into the briefing room, General Patton pointed to the blackboard and ordered the attendant to read the verse from the chapter cited on the blackboard. As the attendant read from the Bible, it was obvious that General Patton had quoted the verse correctly on every word. The church leader's comment was that he had taken the verse a bit out of context from a more recent translation of the Bible. General Patton smiled and said, "The head of such a great church should never take the Bible out of context." This incident has the sound of a legend, but it was reported as a true story in one of General Patton's biographies. I would hesitate to suggest that it might not be true because, as we said so often, the truth about General Patton is usually more amazing than the legends. I was never able to understand General Patton's usual memory until I visited with his daughter, Ruth Ellen Patton Totten. She told me that her father had dyslexia. This is the condition in which the eyes and the brain do not work together. Miss Totten said my father memorized everything because he had problems with reading. This explained many things for me. Since he had trouble reading the Bible, he memorized the verses so that he would not need to read them again. It also explained why he never used lecture notes when he spoke to the troops and staff. His eyes worked with his brain so improperly that his reading would be too slow to convey the message. General Patton had a great RAM, a modern computer term for random access memory. Any weakness of his eyes was offset by his great memory, which he could access with the speed of a computer. General Patton thought of the Bible as the best source of history for the first centuries of our being on earth. A Jewish rabbi agreed, saying, the Bible was the media of the early centuries. That's the reason for all of the begats and begots. There were people tracing their family trees, just as we are doing today. So what I was gonna say is, don't quote me on this. I know I'm not amazing, but let's just, you can always look it up. So I believe Jesus, he was in the Bible. At one point he was going through something, and they actually the apostles actually washed his feet for him, and it was a respect. It was a sign of respect. They didn't do it out of anger. They did it out of nice. They did it out of kindness for him. And it's like General Patton. Why would he tell someone to wash their feet? That sounds stupid. It actually doesn't. It's actually really smart. But let's keep going. Keep moving, and pain will never hit you. And my bad. He never asked someone to wash his feet. Patton asked someone else to wash his own feet. Sorry. My bad. But here we go. Keep moving, and pain will never hit you. It might be difficult to understand how taking a cold shower could be used to help men go into combat, but General Patton did it. I remember his saying, taking a cold shower is just like going into combat. It is only the first second that is hard to take. With a cold shower, if you keep moving around, the pain will not hit you in any one spot. When you go into combat, it is the same way. You keep moving, and the enemy cannot hit you. When you dig a foxhole, you dig your grave. In a cold shower, keep jumping around, so the little bullets of cold water will spread the pain all over. Hiding in the corner of the shower is the same as hiding in the corner of a shower is the same as hiding in a foxhole. You keep moving and jumping, and the pain will be scattered. You keep moving and jumping, and the pain will be scattered. You won't have it. Same way with the enemy bullets. Keep moving forward, and you can find where the bullets are coming from. Then you can kill the fools. They will be so scared when they see you keep on coming. They will surrender before you get there. It is scary when you know someone is coming to kill you, no matter what. And that is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to kill the enemy, no matter what. These words lose some of their power without profanity, but the instructions were taken seriously by the troops. We did take cold showers. We did not have a choice. When we moved into the desert in March of 1942, we used the Colorado River water from the Los Angeles adequate. I'm sorry, aqueduct. I don't know that word. Hold on. Where are we here? ADU. No, it's AQU. EDUCT. Hmm.
Aqueduct.
It's aqueduct. Okay. When we moved into the desert in March of 1942, we used the Colorado River, water from the Los Angeles Aqueduct. The water was ice cold. The best way to take a cold shower, as General Patton explained, is go full cold at once. Never inch into a cold shower any more than you would inch up toward the enemy. Dash into the cold shower. Tear into the enemy so fast the fools will run for their lives. Before having any showers in the desert, we had a bucket shower, a bucket with holes in the bottom held up by 3 poles. It was tricky to warm the water with the sun, cool it with the right amount of cold, throw it onto the holy bucket, and dash under to get showered before the bucket was empty. As I recall, the engineers built our shower building with 5 shower heads. When I'm asked about, well, when I am asked about, well, I knew General Patton and how often I saw him, I think of our cold showers and 5 hole open pit toilet. We often met in the showers in the latrine. General Patton advised taking hot showers for taking the junk out of the holes in the skin, but always finish with the cold to close the holes against germs and bugs. Some doctors advise this hot and cold treatment for muscle pain. I still take a cold shower, and it does scatter the pain. I presume the medical principle is the same as putting ice on pain. I apologize have been if I disrespected General Patton in any way just now. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to read this book, but uh, like it says, well, where does it say that? Hold on. Weird. Yeah, this part I didn't mean to do that, but it's just it is what it is kind of thing. I'm not as good as reading as some of the experts. General Patton had unusual ideas about body pain. His statements were humorous. There is nothing about there is nothing new about pain. If you let a little ache or pain drive you to the hospital, you spend all of your time in bed. More people die in bed than any place. A lot of pains are from sitting in one place too long. Pain has to be shook loose. The body is a machine. Let it set too long and mechanical joints get frozen in position. The way to break out of the pain is to get up and go. Remember in the Bible about the sick man who was told by Jesus to pick up his bed and walk? That sick man did get up and walk away. Pain is just like an enemy. You keep moving around, and the enemy cannot hit you. Same way with pain. The quicker you break away with pain, the quicker you will drive the pain out of your system. You sit too long, and you will not be able to move. When the troops laughed, General Patton would smile and finish by saying, I am so sure you will move in a cold shower. Keep moving the same way when the enemy starts shooting. Let's try this again. I am absolutely sure that you will move in a cold shower. Keep moving the same way when the enemy starts shooting. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll get back to gain strength. Always go beyond exhaustion. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Okay. To gain strength, always go beyond exhaustion. General Patton advocated exercise before the medical profession started prescribing physical activity rather than bed rest for many types of medical problems, including surgery. He pushed for vigorous exercise in 1942, long before the surgeons started getting the patients up the day after surgery. He was preaching exercise before the doctors decided that total bed rest could be final rest in some types of heart cases. General Patton would advise you got to drive the body to the last inch of energy and then go on. You gain nothing by just going up to where your body says you gain nothing by just going up to where your body says you are tired and exhausted. The body will build and grow only to fit the demands which the mind makes up on the lazy body. The body will build and grow only to the body will The body will build and grow only to fit the demands which the mind makes upon the lazy body. If all you do is exercise until the body is tired, the body will get lazy and stop a bit shorter every time. You have to go to the point of exhaustion and go on. That way, the body will figure we got to build up more body strength if that crazy mind is going to drive this hard. If you always quit when you are merely tired, you will never gain. Once you let the body tell the mind when to quit, you are whipped, for sure. You cannot gain by listening to the body. We can become much stronger if we drive the body. I remember General Patton's advice in 1968 when I was on the staff of the Douglas Space Center. One of the doctors in the space program talked of the problems of exercise for astronauts. This doctor stated that research had indicated that muscles will not gain strength by doing something which can be done easily. To gain strength, the doctor reported, the body must be exerted to the point of exhaustion and go on. I stopped listening to the space doctor because my mind was returning to the tall figure of General Patton, giving the same advice over 25 years earlier. Every muscle which is not used will start to decline in strength within a few hours after use. The space doctor added, General Patton would have endorsed this idea. I remember his saying so many times, we can always take one more step. When we are on the tack, we can always go one more mile. General Patton made these statements in 1942. In the 1978 yearbook of the Illustrated World Encyclopedia, Lawrence Cherry stated, Doctors often unwittingly play the plain game. Doctors often unwittingly play the pain game when they admonish the patient to take it easy. And so instead of pushing the body a little more each day, the patient exerts his body as little as possible, getting stiffer, and his body becomes more painful. This article was about pain. General Patton talked of shaking loose from the pain in 1942. The medical profession started making the same statements over 35 years later. For General Patton, it was impossible to go too far. He would say, we lazy humans only use about a tenth of our total body strength, less than that for our brains. We rust out because we are too lazy to get up a good sweat. For those doctors who advise do not overdo, General Patton would protest. We should well better overdo, or we will not do at all. There is truth in both the doctors and in General Patton's advice. Many years later, I survived a major heart attack. General Patton's advice was repeated to me by a heart specialist who advised me on how to recover from the heart problem. This advice was completely different from the advice that a doctor had given my father 30 years earlier. My father's doctor had advised, Take it easy now. Try not to overdo. Get lots of rest. My doctor advised getting your pulse rate up to a high of 150 is not as important as getting your pulse to 100 and holding at 100 for as long as you can. Always try to go a bit further every day to strengthen the muscle of your heart. This was the same advice General Patton gave us in his briefing sessions in the Desert Training Center 40 years earlier. General Patton was always driving himself every morning in the desert as I pulled myself out of my bedding roll. I could look under the tent flap and hear him and see him huffing and puffing as he ran his morning mile. I was 26. General Patton was 57. Long after the war, I learned that General Patton had competed in the Olympics in 1912. He drove himself to win fifth in the pentathlon. He drove himself to win fifth in the pentathlon. Geez, that's hard to say. Okay. He drove himself to win fifth in the pentathlon. He represented the United States Army and paid all of his expenses to compete. He would have won a medal, but the judges ruled that it was impossible to put two bullets through the same hole in the center ring of the pistol target. The games in 1912 were held in Sweden. Many years later, the Swedish government corrected the mistake of the judges and gave General Patton the award that he should have won. Pride in self starts with pride in appearance. According to General Patton, to be a soldier was the highest goal any man could achieve in life. No man could walk with as much pride as a soldier, willing to give his life for his country. Soldiers used the hand salute. Civilians only waved to each other. In World War I, General Patton, then a major, demanded a sharp hand salute. This salute was so quick and sharp, it became known as the Patton salute. It took only one of the General Patton's lectures to cause all of the troops to start saluting as soldiers rather than wave a hand to a friend. Soldiers did not wave. I can recall the words of the lecture. General Patton explained, always standing alone with a microphone without a lectern. General Patton explained, always standing alone with a microphone without a lectern. We are soldiers. Soldiers do many things immediately and by habit. The most important is the hand salute. Army regulations say that enlisted men must salute their officers, and officers must return the salute. This is a pile of nonsense, not his exact words. Officers can salute enlisted men. The highest profession in the world is that of a soldier who is willing to give his life that others can have better lives. That's the same thing Christ did. Think about that. General Patton paused with no change in expression. Christ had 12 disciples. Not a damn one of them was a soldier. Sorry for swearing. They all deserted. All 12 of them should have been shot. All of those fools, not one of them should have lived. We shoot deserters in this army. We are soldiers. Never forget that you are a soldier. Soldiers salute soldiers. Every American soldier is an army. An army is commanded by a 4-star general. Every American soldier is a 4-star army because soldiers win wars. Generals cannot win wars. We salute each other because we are 4-star soldiers. At the time General Patton was a major general, the 2-star rank, General Patton finished this lecture, as he did with all lectures, by giving the troops a Patton salute, which he held until the troops returned the salute. There was no joking with the troops about being soldiers and the salute. The news media joked about the soldiers saluting. Soldiers saluted. They were 4-star soldiers. General Patton said so. They had a war to win, and General Patton said they would win. General Patton had a clear understanding of fear, faith, and pride. He was constantly striving to kill the fears of every one of his soldiers. Faith and confidence builds pride, and pride destroys fear. No one could build pride in soldiers as quickly as General Patton. The highest tribute any Patton soldier could receive was to be called a really good freaking soldier. Any man receiving this tribute would swell with pride. I remember how General Patton instilled pride in every soldier in the Desert Training Center and the 1st Armored Corps. Stuff happens. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Sorry. Okay. Hold on. 1 second. I remember how General Patton instilled pride in every soldier in the Desert Training Center and the 1st Armored Corps. He did it with his famous necktie order. The Patton critics who made fun of this order in their news stories never understood the full impact of the necktie. I must admit that when I saw the order, I was certain that we were in for trouble. Before relating the story about the necktie order, a few facts should be stated. 1st Armored Corps arrived in the California desert without proper uniforms, equipment, tools, or supplies. We arrived with almost nothing for use in the desert. Washing our hands, shaving, washing our feet, and bathing was done in our World War I type metal helmets. This helmet would hold less than a quart of water. To know the stature of General Patton's reputation, I relate the story of his sending me to a store in San Bernardino. To know the stature of General Patton's reputation, I read the story of his sending me to a store in San Bernardino, California. My orders were to purchase all of the wash basins which I could find. I remember the shock of the Sears store manager when I answered his question of how many wash basins I wanted to purchase. I answered, "We would like to purchase 100,000 wash basins." The manager exclaimed, "There can't be that many in the whole United States. People do not use wash basins anymore. We'll buy all that you can locate." I said. "Who is going to pay for all of these basins?" the manager asked. "I have authorization from the United States Army and from General Patton on his personal authorization." "Are you telling me General Patton will pay for 100,000 personally?" "Yes. You can be paid either by General Patton out of his personal account or the United States Army. You can take a choice." "I'll take General Patton's check. I'll get my money faster. You know, he was born near here. There's a town up the road named Patton." For the next half hour, I listened to legends about General Patton. With the delivery of wash basins, only a few hundred to the desert, and with the Army engineers getting water piped to every camp, we could kick our helmet bathing. Sorry. With the delivery of wash basins, only a few hundred to the desert, and with the Army engineers getting water piped to every camp, we could kick our helmet bathing. We had showers and toilets at our base camp. No more open pits. We had everything to keep clean and to keep our uniforms neat. We were wearing the summer lightweight tan uniforms, which were not cool, but much cooler than the winter uniforms some of us had to wear when we arrived. I remember the staff meeting, which was held a week before the necktie order was issued. General Patton outlined what he desired. We have reached the stage in our desert training where there is no excuse for any soldier not to be clean and in proper uniform. All of you old officers that have the faded enemy, all of you old officers that have the faded creamy dress uniforms, send those uniforms home and get a new whites. If you cannot afford new whites, stay away from our dress functions. I want all of my staff to be in the same color of white. We will not mix our summer tans and dress whites at any function. We are going to have a lot of brass coming out here from Washington to see what we are doing. When we meet with them or with any public organization, we are going to be dressed better than they are. When people come out here at any hour of the day, we will be in the summer tans. Wear only the shirt during the day, but put on the blouse in the evening. Army regulations will be enforced. No man, officer or enlisted man, leaves this post without being in proper uniform. And that uniform better be clean. He must be wearing the insignia of the 1st Armored Corps on his arm shoulder. He must be wearing the insignia of the 1st Armored Corps on his arm below his left shoulder. Any man out of the uniform or with long hair and dirt stays on the post. No man can have any pride if he looks as if he has to go to the bathroom or has just been there. General Patton did not say one word about neckties. The necktie was a part of the uniform. There was some complaining from the troops who were turned back at the gate because of the dirty shoes, improper uniform, or no insignia of the 1st Armored Corps. For soldiers, this meant the loss of their 3-day pass. The military police at the gate did not take any excuses because every man had over 30 days to get his uniform in proper condition. General Patton knew, as we all did, that a soldier could be in proper uniform when he passed the guards at our main gate, and 60 seconds later, he could have his tie and shirt off. I must admit, I have seen soldiers carrying their shirts and ties as if they were going to the bathroom for a shower. General Patton's attack on his problem was the necktie order. General Patton's on this problem was the necktie order. When I saw the order, I was sure we were in for a revolution with the troops. I could see hundreds of men being court-martialed for failure to wear the uniform complete with necktie. When the order was issued, I was the general's judge advocate for attorney for the command. I could see the need for a dozen clerk typists to type all the charge sheets against the soldiers. The order was simple. It stated that every man leaving the Desert Training Center would be in proper uniform. There was no mention of having the necktie tied and tucked under the shirt between the second and third buttons of the shirt. The order stated that any officer or non-commissioned officer seeing any soldier out of uniform was organized and ordered to stop the soldier, get his name and his organization. This order was for soldiers in downtown Los Angeles, Palm Springs, or any city. If any company commander should have two of his men stopped for being out of uniform of the post, if any company commander should have two of his men stopped for being out of uniform off the post in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, or in any city, if any company commander should have two of his men stopped for being out of uniform off the post in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, or in any city, the company commander would be notified and ordered to write a detailed letter explaining why two of the commander's men were out of uniform. This meant that every commander and every company commander, This meant that every company commander had to have total remote control over his men. Los Angeles was 100 miles from our camp. Los Angeles was over 100 miles from our camp. The necktie order had a third paragraph. If three soldiers from the same company were discovered out of the uniform, the company commander would be ordered to submit his letter of resignation from the United States Army or be court-martialed for failure to perform his duties as a commander. I was correct about one thing. The troops did revolt over the order, but it was not a revolution against General Patton as I suspected. It was a revolution to be neat, clean, and as spit and polished as General Patton. Immediately every soldier was wearing the insignia of the 1st Armored Corps and had the appearance of being ready for a dress parade. Every soldier was walking 10 feet tall with the pride of belonging to General Patton. I talked with many of the company commanders to learn how they had been able to control the soldiers of their command. I learned that the commanders called all of his officers together and declared that before he would submit a letter of resignation, every man in the outfit would be busted to a buck private. One commander told me, "I just had a company meeting and said that any man caught a uniform would be restricted to this desert for the duration of the war." I'm sure there was grumbling among the men, but the grumbling was slight. When a soldier walked the block in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, or in any city, he could see that his dress was so superior to the average soldier that no man in the 1st Armored Corps would ever think of being anything other than one of Patton's best. There was a revolution in pride. Pride in appearance was the key that General Patton used to build pride in the hearts and souls of the men. After the necktie order was issued, General Patton added a few remarks which I remember. He repeated his soldier looking like he was coming from the bathroom or on his way to the bathroom. He added with his boyish smile, "A good soldier will wait to undress until he gets to the bedroom. He can discipline himself to wait that long." The idea of a soldier looking half-dressed brings disrespect upon the entire United States Army. I do not want any man from our command looking like any other soldier. I wanted every man to look like he belongs to our 1st Armored Corps. In enforcing this order, General Patton did what he always instructed us to do. He enforced the existing regulations and did not enact any new rules. So often, some new colonel would insist on writing a new regulation for the troops. After a limited discussion, General Patton would ask Colonel, "Before we do anything, let's see exactly what Army regulations have to say. It seems to me there is a regulation on that. We do not want to confuse the troops with two regulations on the same subject." In nearly every case, General Patton's memory was correct. General Patton's critics said that the necktie was demanded when on duty, under a truck, or tank in the field. This was not true. On duty, any soldier could wear almost anything which would help him with his work. With one exception, he had to wear the helmet. General Patton always went into a rage about wearing the helmet. He would shout, "I will shoot any man, whether he is dead or not, if he does not wear his helmet." That helmet can turn away a lot of junk the enemy might send at us. Wear the helmet at all times. We need every man. We cannot lose any man because he's too dumb to wear his helmet. Learn to work in your helmet. It will save your life. I remember another lecture that General Patton gave the troops about wearing the insignia on the uniform. We called this lecture, "Let them know we're coming." General Patton always started his briefing with a soft voice with several long periods of silence. He would start by saying, "Before long, we'll be going into combat. We can hope We'll be that lucky. The country needs us to kill those fools. Combat will be far less exciting than our training here in the desert. There was laughter. General Patton waited. General Patton waited with his boyish grin before saying, "When we go into combat, I will shoot any man that removes the insignia of our organization or the insignia of his rank. I know some generals demand that every man remove all insignia, so if captured, the enemy cannot tell what organization they were fighting. I want the enemy to know they are facing the toughest fighting men in the world." There was some chuckling, and General Patton would put on his war face and order, "We are the best, and don't ever forget it. Don't let anybody forget that we are the best." Everyone was silent as General Patton continued, "I want the rank showing on the helmet on every officer of every rank, officer or non-commissioned officer. Let that rank be seen. Polish that rank on your helmet so it will reflect the light. None of this non-reflective, polished stuff. When officers are leading the men, the enemy knows they are facing a fighting organization and not a group of men being pushed from behind. Any army with the officers in the rear has all the fighting strength of a bushel of spaghetti. Enemy troops will surrender when they see our officers are up front." There was some laughter. Another thing. "Do not worry about being captured. You can be sure you will be treated kindly when you are wearing the insignia of our organization. If you should be captured, tell those fools that if they know what is good for them, they will surrender, because I will never be far away from you." There was laughter, but General Patton had made his point. There were thousands of Germans who did surrender when they knew they were facing Patton's Third Army. To surrender to General Patton was not as great a dishonor as to surrender to any other organization. Many organizations, according to history, would drive into the area of the Third Army so they could surrender with honor. One German general, commanding a corps, sent word through the line that he was ready to surrender. To surrender over 20,000 prisoners was not a simple task. Arrangements were made for the surrender terms. On the day and hour assigned, the German general made a short speech. The American soldiers who understood German laughed, as the other soldiers were silent. The German general had stated that he was surrendering only because he could surrender General Patton's Third Army. The laughter was caused by the fact that the German general had made a speech in front of troops from the United States' Ninth Army. General Patton's demand for the perfect uniform placed all of us on the staff in unusual situations. For reception for General Marshall on his visit to the desert, General Patton wanted all of us to wear white gloves. Our staff had increased to over 50, but only 2 officers had a pair of white gloves. General Patton contributed 2 more pair. In such a reception, the officers lined up with the highest rank being the first to meet General Marshall. Our reception line went off in perfect style with every officer wearing white gloves. The first colonel to meet General Marshall quickly returned to our line and gave his gloves to one of us, who slipped into the loaned gloves. General Patton told us his friend George Marshall had complimented him, saying, "You always have the most loyal and friendly staff. It is seldom you see staff members greeting each other with so much handshaking. We were a friendly group of men, but the handshaking was to exchange the white gloves. Habits are not easily broken. It has been over 30 years since I tucked the end of the necktie between the second and third buttons of my shirt to comply with the necktie order. Today, I discover quite often that I have left the second button of my shirt unbuttoned. When I follow this habit, I remember the necktie order and think of General Patton as I fasten the second button. I live in the southwestern part of the United States, where casual dress is common because of the heat. I never wear a shirt without a tie, without thinking of General Patton. I puzzle over whether this casual dress causes the lack of pride in self, in family, in schools, churches, and country. I admit that in the heat of the summer, I wear a shirt outside of my slacks. When I do, I remember General Patton's remark, "Dress with your shirt out makes you look like you have just been to the bathroom or have to go." A few years ago, it was necessary for one of our prisons in a city in Arizona to build a tent outside the jail to house the prisoners. The prisoners shouted, Cruel and inhuman treatment. The local no discipline society agreed that no prisoner should be confined to live in a tent in the desert. In the desert training center, we lived in tents. Fans and air conditioning had to be installed for the criminals in the tent jail. When discipline fails, pride in self is destroyed. When society does not discipline criminals, criminals punish disciplined society. When society treats criminals better than they do the soldiers who protect society, pride in self and pride in society is lost. And no disrespect to any soldiers, no disrespect to General Patton. I'm just reading. I'm trying to read this correctly. It's not easy. I'm trying to give a lot of enthusiasm while I'm reading. So if I mess up here and there, my bad. Okay, we're on the next chapter. Never feel failure. All right, let's take a break. Okay. Never fear failure. I've been shot at all my life. Only once did the enemy ever hit me with a bullet. Of course, I've had a lot of splatter stuff. No matter what you do, people will be shooting at you. Even your friends will shoot at you. It is true. You have to protect yourself from your friends more than you do from your enemies. The more you do, the more your friends and your enemies will say you have not done. That's a law of life. If you are afraid of being shot at, you are whipped before you start. General Patton gave this advice to old and new staff members. I remember General Patton saying, men can be divided into two types, command and staff. We always need staff officers, and some men will always be staff types. Some men can never be trained to be commanders. He lectured on, we need good commanders. A man is either a commander or he is not. A commander has to lead men into battle. In the history of the world, we have had few commanders. It takes the right mixture of common horse sense and stupidity to make a good commander. Smart men know that any battle plan can fail. If I had a good sense, for example, I would not be in the army. But shoot, we've got a war to win. If we do not kill the enemy, they will kill us. War is that simple. It takes a lot of courage to lead men into battles where many of your friends will be killed. A commander does not dare have any fear. If a commander shows any fear, the men will see it. The men will be scared. When there is fear of failure, there will be failure. It would be many years before I would grasp the full meaning of General Patton's words. I could not believe that some men refused to make decisions. These are the staff types. These types can never command. Some men do not want the command role, where all the blame will fall upon them for all failures. An example is Bing Crosby, who stated on national television that he never wanted a lead role in any movie. He said, I just want to sing. If the movie flops, I would not suffer too great a loss since I was only the singer. Our society in 1940 did not want commanders. We wanted followers. We had the gifted child programs. We had the honors programs for the children who get high grades from the teachers, with the children graded on the smiles, if not with their brains. We taught our children that it was terrible not to have high grades in school. Colleges will not take students unless they have high grades. Our children were smarter than their teachers and the colleges. The children learned the high grades could be secured by merely repeating the words of their teachers. The children took the courses in which they could get high grades without work. Forget the discipline of study to get knowledge. Go for the high grades without any work. After a generation, we had children who could get high grades but could not face the battles of life, the fear of failure, and the troubles of life. Discipline was so unknown in many schools that some students were gifted out of high school, even college, without the ability to read. It reminded me of the brief sessions when General Patton would discipline a no disciplined officer from Washington. A dead man does not have any ego. General Patton said so often. High school students dare not to be told they did not have enough knowledge to read, would ruin the child's ego to fail to promote him, gift him into the next grade so that he can play football on the team. What is the result? The graduates do not have enough ego to read nor to face life. I remember a young man who was gifted in grade school. In high school, this young man discovered girls. And the high school teachers discovered that his gifts were not in knowledge of high school subjects. His first high school grades were average. His parents could not tolerate having an average child. The young man was placed in a private school where he could be protected from failing into average. This young man has never recovered from being ungifted. He has never been able to face the task of making decisions in the battles of the business world and of life. Good commanders must be so stupid that they will attack in the face of fear. Winston Churchill was a fool to say, we will fight on the beaches, we will fight in the streets and in our homes. And though this nation lasts 1,000 years, this will be our finest hour. Not nice words, but Churchill spoke the truth that the English people had to face the battle for life. Any good staff man would have collected all the facts about the strength of England and of Germany and said, "We will seek peace in our time." This is an exact quote from this is an exact quote from the man who was Prime Minister of England before Churchill. Hitler expected England to fold and seek peace without a battle. Hitler failed to properly judge the power of Churchill to encourage the English people to accept nothing but blood, toil, sweat, and tears. No doubt, Hitler listened to the young men in the university that resolved not to give their lives for their country. A good commander faces the cold, hard truth of failure with every decision. He must make decisions without any fear of failure. General Patton charged, "Any officer who is afraid of failure will never win. Any man who is afraid to die will never really live." There's a time to take counsel of fear, and there's a time to forget your fears. It is always important to know exactly what you are doing. General Patton admonished, "The time to take counsel of your fears is before you make an important battle decision. That's the time to listen to every fear you can imagine. When you have collected all the facts and fears, make your decision. After you make a decision, forget all your fears and go full steam ahead." General Patton paused for several seconds before saying, "In war, every plan you make is going to be life and death decision. You will live or die by your decision. Since we are not afraid of life, since we are not afraid of life or death, there is no reason to take counsel of our fears." He continued, "The chance of being killed in war is not as great as the chance of being killed on our highways back home. If you want to take counsel of your fears, stop driving a car. It is dangerous to charge at high speed towards another car and miss only by a few feet. We do it every day on a highway and accept the fear of a head-on crash. It is not safe to crawl into bed. More people die in bed than in any place." We laughed. When there was time, General Patton explained his ideas, saying, "The person who cannot face a fear will always be running away from it. If a person cannot face death, he will never be able to face life. Because every day of life, if a person cannot face death, he will never be able to face life. Because every day of life is one day closer to death. If you listen to your fears about death, you will destroy every day for living." I had an experience which proved the wisdom of General Patton's principle of never listening to your fears. I should relate that my service with General Patton ended in September of 1942. The Army needed pilots, and I was young enough to qualify for pilot training. I should also say that in 1942, all aircraft pilots were a part of the Army Air Corps. The bombers and the fighter squadrons were using the old organization charts, which considered aircraft a tool for the Army. We needed every pilot we could get because of the high death rate in the bombing missions over Europe. One day, General Patton asked me to come to his office after a brief session. One day, General Patton asked me to come into his office after a briefing session. He said, "Williamson, I cannot hold you much longer in the armed corps. The pressure is on to release every man your age for pilot training. Frankly, we need pilots over us who know something about tanks. There must be close cooperation between the pilots in the planes and the tank commanders if we are to save lives in combat. The only way I can keep you on my staff is if you cannot pass the physical exam for pilot training." I answered, "General, I passed the flight physical several months ago. I suppose I could dream up some ache or pain and try to flunk a physical. What would you do if you were my age?" "I would go for the pilot training. The future is in the air. If I were your age, it is not your age. It is the age of your looks. Although you are an attorney, you look too young to ever have a command in the armed corps, unless the war would last 20 years. Frankly, if you stay on my staff, you will be shifted into doing nothing but legal work. You are too young to sit at a desk to fight a war. If I were you, I would get the hell out of here. You are sure to get a command in the Army Air Corps despite how young you look. They have generals in the Air Corps that are so young they look like kids. When you get up there, do not forget what our tanks look like on the ground. Don't drop any of your damn bombs on us when you get up there over our heads." Sorry for swearing. General Patton was silent for several seconds before rising and putting his hand on my shoulder. "I have just given you the same advice General Pershing gave me in World War I. I was on his headquarters staff. He advised me to transfer to the new tank corps rather than shuffle papers on the staff. 4 young officers were transferred from the 1st Armored Corps to the Air Corps. Several months later, I finished flight training and was assigned as a squadron commander of one of the first night fighter squadrons, the squadrons using airborne radar. These planes were given the mission of flying at night and in bad weather. These planes were given the mission of flying at night and in bad weather. Our primary mission was to protect the ground troops at night from bomber attacks. I am sure I was not assigned to this position because of having training with armored tanks, but I do believe I was selected because of service with General Patton. The task was not easy to get pilots to fly at night and in bad weather. Every decision was a life or death decision. If the weather was bad, I would make a short flight to get a good weather check for the other pilots. I followed General Patton's advice. Never ask a pilot to fly when you would not fly. For example of using the never take counsel of your fears principle, early one morning I was scheduled to fly a P-70 twin-engine night fighter aircraft on a test flight with a rebuilt engine. Within a second after raising the landing gear for takeoff, the rebuilt engine exploded. There was no time to take counsel of any fear. Full time was given to keeping the wings level and flying straight. With one engine out, it was the same as one horse pulling and one horse dragging backwards. I was trying to get the plane above the tops of the Florida pine trees and high enough to parachute out to find a suitable spot to crash. I managed to nurse the plane high enough to make a shallow turn back to our own airport. After the emergency landing on the wrong runway, I used the good engine to pull the aircraft off the runway. I called our control tower. Can you send a tow truck to pull this plane back to the line? I have had some trouble. My right engine is out. I can get off the runway, but I cannot taxi. The control tower operator did not need to be told that I was in trouble. Earlier, I had called the control tower to ask the field to be cleared for my emergency landing. Also, the control tower operator could see black smoke and flames pouring from the right engine. Following our usual habit, when finishing a flight, I reached for the aircraft logbook and started to write up the bad engine when the tower operator called. Don't worry. If you could not get out of the plane, the ambulance and fire trucks are on the way. They will help you out. I came out of my never listen to fear state of mind and looked at the flames nearing the gas tanks. It was then I listened to fear and flipped open the canopy and jumped off the left wing without a ladder. In times of danger from floods, fires, combat, cancer, and old age, the mind does not gain by taking counsel of fears. We will get older whether we listen to the fears of old age or not. The fear of age can be worse than age. Cancer can cause death from worry as easily as from the disease. Proof of this fact is that many people fear cancer so much that they refuse to have the physical examination, which could result in early treatment to destroy the cancer. Several years later, my military service ended with a telephone call from the flight surgeon who said, "We must amputate your left leg. You have bone cancer." A few weeks earlier, a tumor had been removed from my left knee. Cancer had not been mentioned. However, when the slides and x-rays reached Washington, the report changed to cancer. I had been flying again with a metal brace on my left foot. I had just returned to San Francisco from an inspection trip of our radar training center in Florida. War does not provide time for doctors to use good bedside manners. I asked the flight surgeon, what if I refuse the amputation? He did not waste words. You have less than 2 years to live, even with the amputation. Having these facts, there was only one decision. With my fellow officers, we made a slogan to laugh at the fear. Don't hesitate, amputate. General Patton's principles helped me through the amputation. I kept repeating silently, never take counsel of the fear of cancer. Every day of life was another day. Every day of life pushed death back one day. No one knows how many days of life we have remaining. General Patton was right. If we take counsel of our fears, we will never enjoy life. 10 years later, the doctor advised, you have whipped cancer. Most unusual. 9 more years and a doctor told me something has to go. You have bone cancer again. We either take off more of your leg or you will go. The surgeons amputated again and left me with only 2 inches of left leg. The surgeons are still 2 inches from where I live. The second amputation was over 30 years ago. General Patton's principles have helped me through 50 years of fear. There are many examples of the wisdom of refusing to take counsel of fear. An example for me is in walking. With the leg amputations, I've been compelled to learn to walk with many different legs. Every fitting of a leg requires learning to walk again. With a new leg, there's a new time to walk carefully, watching the wood foot move forward. I learned that if we constantly look at our shoes as we walk, we are sure to stumble and fall. Whether we walk with artificial legs or our own legs, sorry, whether we walk with artificial legs or our own legs, we dare not look at the ground. It is good advice to walk tall. With a wooden leg, if I do not walk tall, the left foot drags the ground. If I lean over to watch to make sure my left foot is coming forward, I stumble constantly. The person with two legs who looks at the ground will fall more than the walking tall person. In talking to a large group of troops, General Patton would laugh about combat and the fears of combat. There is nothing to combat. It is just like the fear of getting married, General Patton lectured. When you have dated every girl in the neighborhood, you have enough sense to get married or stay single. You have the facts. When you get the best combat training and have the best equipment, you're ready to kill the enemy. You can forget your fears and get the job done. There will be a shot that might fall close now and then, but nothing to worry about. Combat is like a marriage. A stray shot now and then is like a spat with your wife. Could make the marriage better. The more combat time we can get, the better we will be. Combat will make all of us better soldiers. There was laughter, but the men learned to silence their fears. General Patton will conclude, after you make a decision, do it like hell, and never take counsel of your fears. All right, next we are doing when at war, we must kill people. We're gonna take a break. Good job, guys. Okay. Whoops. When at war, we must kill people. General Patton had the ability to get the bare bone truth, and he gave this truth to the troops. He was blunt. War means we must kill or be killed. That's all there is to war. If we are to win, we must kill before the enemy kills us. After his blunt statements, General Patton paused for the truth to soak into the minds of the troops. He continued, "In war, it is not murder to kill. The declaration of war makes us heroes when we kill. War makes it right for strong nations to take over weak nations. Thus, might makes right. Peacetime, religion gets confused about war despite all of the wars in the Bible. Religion gives us a code of what is right, but religion does not have the power to punish the nations that do not do what is right. Religion has been causing wars for centuries by starting fights that the religious leaders do not have the might to make right. General Washington was said to be first in war and first in peace. He said, "The way to peace is to prepare for war." Religious leaders forgot that God never wanted people to be weak. The laws of God and of Mother Nature are the same. The strong, the strong destroy the weak. This is true in war, true with nature, with weeds, and true with the trees that blow over in the wind. That is God's truth and a basic law of nature. General Patton was always talking about the best way to settle a war. His plan was simple: let the leader of one country fight the leader of the other country. Think of all the lives that would be saved if only one man had to die from that fight. In the early days of our country, the code of honor was to duel with any passion who differed with you. The time, place, and weapons for the duel were all set by the seconds who had the task of seeing that the duel followed the code of conduct for the killing. The winner had the right to kill. It was a disgrace not to demand a duel or to refuse to duel. This type of killing was permitted by society's code of conduct. This is a basic law of nature. The buck deer that does not fight for his herd will lose his honor and his herd. The non fighting buck deer walks away in disgrace and dishonor. The same rule applies to the man in the earliest years of our country. The same rules apply to the man in the early years of our country. The man who refused to duel had to walk away in disgrace as the buck deer walked away. We stopped our duels after Aaron Burr shot and killed Alexander Hamilton. At the time of this duel, the code of conduct was changing. It was accepted that it was not dishonorable to fire the dueling weapon into the air and not attempt to kill your enemy. According to some of the historians, Aaron Burr failed to follow the new code that required the duel but not kill the enemy. Aaron Burr shot to kill and had to leave the country in disgrace. The code of conduct was changed to stop duels completely. It was not safe to duel, and not whether to shoot to kill or to shoot in the air. When nations go to war, they are dueling, but they do not have seconds with enough might to stop the dueling nations from fighting. Poison gas cannot be used, but it is alleged that some nations are prepared to use poison gas. There is a trend towards a code of conduct for nations that would prohibit the use of any weapon that would destroy too many people with one bomb. The problem is there are no seconds around to enforce. Oh, The problem is there are no seconds around to enforce any rule against the nuclear bombs. Unlike the buck deer who can walk away from a fight, nations cannot walk away from the attack, despite the number of people who are praying and begging for peace. With General Patton's ability to get the truth to the troops, he secured the trust of every soldier. He spoke truth with a forceful attitude, whether it was nice truth or bad. His constant command to the staff was get the truth, get all the facts. His decisions were based on the best information, which we could obtain, whether it was favorable to our mission or against the mission. General Patton said so often. We do not have many commanders. We, General Patton said so often. We do not have many good commanders, not because they all die in combat, but because not because they all die in combat, but because few men can make a decision which could cause their death. General Patton explained, using the example of a pilot flying a plane, saying the life of an aircraft pilot depends on his ability to make quick life and death decisions. At the end of the runway before takeoff, the pilot goes through a checklist to make sure the plane is ready to fly. Any mistake in reviewing this checklist and the penalty can be death. Halfway down the runway, the pilot must make a second quick decision, namely, is the plane going fast enough to fly, or shall the throttle be cut to stay on the ground? The time to make this decision is less than a hundredth of a second. Beyond the halfway point on the runway, the pilot cannot change his decision. In fact, he cannot change his direction of flight in case of engine failure, single engine or twin. He cannot change direction until he has a safe speed and altitude. Any attempt to turn back to the airport will result in a crash. This decision-making process must be so This decision-making process must be made so quickly that some men can never learn to fly. There are too many fears of crashing. They have too many fears of crashing. In the evening conversation in his tent, General Patton said, in life, as with flying a plane, some men are never ready for takeoff. Some men want to stay on the ground, or should they get in the air, they want to turn back when there can be no turning back. Some men cannot make the life and death decisions required in flying. General Patton often said, our fine American young men find it difficult to make the decision to pull the trigger that will kill another man. It was easy for General Patton to use flying in his examples because he was a pilot. He had his own plane, which he flew in the desert. He continued to use his personal plane until the Army secured a plane and a pilot for his use. Whether there was a need, General Patton did not hesitate to spend his own money to aid the military effort. I regret to report that General Patton was not a skilled pilot. His landings were so rough that he almost never carried a passenger in the little two-seater plane. The narrow landing strip ran along the Los Angeles aqueduct. The narrow landing strip ran along the Los Angeles aqueduct. The strip was not level, smooth, nor free from blowing sand. Since our tents were not far from the landing strip, it was not usual for some officer to shout, "He's coming in!" We ran away from the landing strip, at least far enough so we could watch the landing. The reasons for General Patton's rough landings could have been his eye problems with dyslexia. His eyes could have caused him to be unable to judge the distance to the ground from the air on landing. About his landing of the plane, General Patton would laugh and say, I always have trouble landing that dang plane. I always bounce several times. My landings are poor. My recoveries are good. Ministers and laymen who preach so constantly of the peace would not understand General Patton and his comparing flying with facing death. However, after Pearl Harbor, we did not have any preaching about peace. Many peace ministers joined the army forces as chaplains. They stopped preaching peace and started singing the song, Praise the Lord, and passed the ammunition. Many ministers learned how to fire all of our weapons of war. Many of them carried the trusty army automatic. Many of them carried the trusty army automatic pistol on their belt. I remember one saying, I pray to God to save me, but I know God would want me to do a bit to save myself from the enemy. Ministers are human, perhaps more human than the average layman. Ministers and preachers can lose their cool for peace and change their preaching in a flash. In 1983, a minister's young daughter was brutally raped. In an instant, the minister wanted to kill the rapist and would have stabbed the rapist to death if he had not been stopped by friends. In charging at the rapist, the minister was as profane as General Patton. There is an amusing side to the threat of the nuclear war and the preaching of the peace by the ministers. One of the clergy proposed that if nuclear weapons could not be banned totally, then the nations of the world should agree. Then the nations of the world should agree that the nuclear weapons should be used only on soldiers. This type of thinking places the blame for wars on the soldiers. This type of thinking would blame firemen for fires and police for causing crimes. In truth, these preachers are saying, I'm afraid to die. Let someone else die for me. This violates the teaching of Jesus. If you are to save your life, you must be willing to lose your life. No one wants to face the truth that the major causes of war throughout the centuries has been religion. In this generation, the wars are caused by the constant fighting of the Jews and the Arabs, the Hindus and the Muslims, the Protestants and the Catholics. As General Patton would chide, no one can argue with God's truth. General Patton had harsh words for the religious leaders who opposed the efforts of the military by preaching, "Thou shalt not kill." General Patton called these types pulpit killers. He commented, "These pulpit killers go around preaching these he commented, "These pulpit killers go around preaching that the Bible says that you should not kill. This causes the death of many thousands of good soldiers. Dang little these pulpit killers know about the Bible. They know even less about the way God works. They should read all of the Bible, not just the part they like. God has never hesitated to kill when one man or a race of people needed to be punished. God helped David kill Goliath. How about Noah and the ark?" Dang. All the people were drowned who were not on the ark. God took the blame God took the blame for this mass murder. How about the opening of the Red Sea? Moses. One race was destroyed and another saved. Don't preach to me about God not wanting us to kill. War means that we have to kill people. That's all there is to it. That is the only way to win. War must be won for God's sake. He has a part in every war. And I meant to say Lord, by the way. The quicker we kill the enemy, the quicker we can go home and listen to the pulpit killers tell us what we did wrong. If it wasn't for us, those pulpit killers would be shot for standing in their own pulpits. Our task is to kill the enemy before they kill us. Usually General Patton finished one of these sessions with a long pause before concluding. All of this peace talk is the reason our country never goes to war. With the help of the pulpit killers, we invite the attack of the enemy. We invited all of our wars, including our first war. We failed to protect our own property, so the British moved soldiers into our homes. General Patton was not as harsh with Conspicuous. Nope, we're looking that one up. I'm not. Hold on. No, let's look it up. CONSCIENTIOUS. Whoa. Conscientious. Yikes. Where is that word? Conscientious. Okay. General Patton was not harsh with conscientious objectors as he was with pulpit killers. He accepted the laws, which permitted the conscientious objectors to refuse to carry weapons to kill. He advised, not every man can be a soldier. To be a soldier is the highest profession of his life. To be a soldier is the highest profession of life, comes the closest to being a life like Christ, who gave his life for others, as we may give our lives in war. When you get a conscientious objector, get him out of the combat unit as fast as possible. If you don't get him out, he will cause many men to die. We dare not hesitate when it is necessary to kill, or we will be killed. We have to be quick on drawing the trigger. Transfer the conscientious objectors and the gold bricks back into civilian life where they cannot cause others to die. Gold brick was the word soldiers used for the man who was always showing up on sick call at the hospital. Although General Patton was critical of gold bricks and pulpit killers, he did not place all ministers in the pulpit idiot or killer class. He invited ministers from the neighboring cities to visit our camp to share church services with our army chaplains. Many accused General Patton of loving war. In fact, the Patton movie script had him saying, "I love war." General Patton did not love war, but he was proud that he had the faith to face death so that others might live. General Patton hated war far more than the pulpit killers. Often he quoted the Bible: "We will always have wars and rumors of wars." General Patton hated the military and political leaders who delayed, regrouped, consolidated gains, defended land, dug foxholes, or would do anything that would make the war last longer than necessary. His first thought was always about the soldiers and how to save their lives. For some men, war is a political game. It is necessary to keep military generals and political leaders happy, despite the cost and the number of soldiers killed on both sides of the war. A British general, H. Assam, reported 4 times since the breakout at Avranches' invasion of France, Patton and his army gave. Oh, I see what's happening now. My bad. Oh boy. Hold on. Maybe it'll load. Thanks. Technology. It happens. Got to give it time. I can always just refresh the page. I don't know what that'll do though. Hold on. All right, we're on 125. Let's refresh the page. Well, son of a nutcracker. What are we gonna do? I mean, we did read a good amount today. Could just call it a day until the internet gets back. Weird. All right, 1 second. I have an idea.